On today's episode of Beauty Behind the Brand, we interview one of the co-founders of 3 Ships, Laura Burget. We talk about natural beauty, some of the challenges she went through with having to change business names, as well as her experience on Dragon's Den, being diagnosed with brain cancer, and her best advice as an entrepreneur. So let's jump into this episode and hear all these takeaways. All right, we got Laura on, and she's going to tell us all about her story on how she started her business.
Amazing. So happy to be here with you today. Really excited to chat through everything. So I'm the co-founder of 3 Ships. We're a line of natural skincare products. Originally got started actually as a side hustle. So my co-founder and I started the business when we were fresh out of school. I went to the University of Toronto for chemical engineering. She went to Queen's for commerce. And both her and I were avid consumers of natural skincare, but we're tired with a lot of issues that we honestly experienced on our own within the industry. So the 2 main issues that we set out to address were that products within natural were so expensive, like $70 plus for a cream or a serum, sometimes over $100 for many of like the top of the line products. And really, it was just crazy markups and margins for these companies because it was such a niche space. And then the second issue that we had is that there was a lot of greenwashing. So once we found products that we could afford as recent grads that claimed that they were natural, once you actually dug into the formulation and into the ingredient list, you discovered that it was really nothing natural about the formula itself. So we believe that there could be and should be a product that is the intersection of affordability, natural ingredients, and also focuses on efficacy. So that was the initial vision for the product line. Connie, my co-founder, and I each put in $2,000 to get the business off the ground, which was pretty much my entire savings at the time,
Yeah.
being like a recent student, a recent graduate. So we got the business started with just $4,000. So it came from really lean, scrappy beginnings. And then essentially for the first year and a half, we side hustled it outside of our 9 to 5. So I was still working full time at that time in software sales. Connie was working as an account manager at Kimberly-Clark, which is a consumer goods company. And we'd basically meet up in our evenings during the weeknights, usually 2 nights a week, and then one time on the weekends. We do a lot of farmers markets and craft fairs to sell locally and build up more of an audience here within Toronto, where we're based out of. And that's really how the brand got started. Very, very humble beginnings.
That's amazing. And I feel like too, it's like I personally don't have a co-founder, but I feel like sometimes it's very lonely when you don't have
Oh,
someone
yeah.
to bounce those ideas off, especially in a startup. So how did you guys originally meet? Was it in university where you originally had met?
It wasn't actually. So we had met through a mutual friend. So one of my
Okay.
good friends in university knew Connie from middle school way back in the day. And I had run businesses in undergrad as well. And I had 2 companies. One of them was a retail bookstore on campus, and then the other one was a College Pro like painting franchise, exterior house painting. And during College Pro, I was a solo entrepreneur and found that very challenging. So I knew that for my next business, I knew that I wanted to start something after school. And I knew that I needed a co-founder. I'm not someone who could do solo entrepreneurship. I have so much respect for entrepreneurs like yourself that can do it alone. I just work so much better in team environments. So once I come up with the idea of what 3 Ships would be, and at the time it was under a completely different brand name called New Body, which I'm sure we'll get into the story of the rebranding at some point later in this conversation. I had like essentially pitched this idea to my friend Brandon and told him about what I was thinking. And he was the one who was like, oh, you should talk to my friend Connie. She's like an avid consumer in this space, run your idea by her. So that was how we initially met, was basically for me to do market research and bounce ideas off her, show her product packaging. It's supposed to be a quick like 40-minute sushi dinner for me to just basically data mine her essentially.
Yeah.
But we ended up clicking right out of the gates, and it turned out that Brandon actually knew that Connie was looking to start a business but didn't have any ideas, versus I had an idea and was looking for a co-founder. So he kind of like set us up on this like founder first date in a way. And literally that same night, 3 hours after we had met, I asked her if she wanted to be my co-founder. She said yes, and we literally got started the next day.
Oh my gosh. So what year was that in?
That was November of 2016.
Oh,
And then
wow.
we launched New Body, which evolved into 3 Ships in March of 2017. So we basically did everything needed for the launch process in those 3 months leading up to that point between when we had met and when we officially launched. And when I met her, I essentially had the brand name, some of our initial products developed and formulated, and like our website ish started, maybe 10% there, but everything else we did together.
That's amazing. And then I remember seeing a reel, I think it was a reel on your social, and it was you guys in basically in someone's apartment, like
Yeah.
unlabeling, boxing everything. So what was like your first like kind of where you were like, okay, this is actually gonna work? Where was that kind of light bulb moment that
The,
happened?
I would say the light bulb moment was once we started to get more traction with larger retailers, and especially once we landed our first major PO. So we got a PO, this was around the year and a half in mark, for $250,000, or sorry, 250,000 units, which ended up being like $160,000
Mhm.
in actual sales. And so for us, we were like, oh my gosh, this is actually starting to grow and to become its own thing. And so at that point is really the signal to us to go full time.
Mhm.
We kind of knew that the brand had momentum. We knew that our customers really loved our products, and we could have an idea of what we would do once we went full time. So that was a trigger point for us.
That's amazing. And now you have sales background, like you said before, too.
Mhm.
Like, did you find you were using more of your sales background or more of your like knowledge around ingredients, formulations, that where was kind of a lot of your time focused?
So within the team, I manage the back end of the business, and then recently, within the last like year, I've picked up managing marketing as well, so that Connie can focus on our wholesale channels. Um, Initially, I would say that was very much both that I was using between like the formulation side and the sales side. Now I probably use actually more of the sales background
Oh,
because
that's awesome.
I'm a big proponent that I think every founder, every entrepreneur should have a sales background. Ideally, right out of school, just jump right into sales. The
Mhm.
scrappier, the better. Ideally, you're like pounding the pavement and going door knocking, or you're cold calling. I am actually extremely shy and I'm an introvert. So, me picking up these sorts of skills was very uncomfortable for me to begin with. I was not good at selling when I first started. I did not feel good about it. I got like the sales cringiness that you'll hear people experience. But over time, you get more used to it and you realize that it's not so much about like pushing ideas on people, but more about helping them find a solution to their problems. And you
Mhm.
learn how to work through a sales cycle, how to keep track of different leads, how to write a cold email. And this type of knowledge is so important to founders because ultimately you're always selling something. You're
Yes.
either selling the product, which of course Connie does to our retailers, and we do through our website, as well to our direct consumer customers. But if not that, you're also selling the vision of the company to prospective employees to convince them to follow you on this like
Yeah.
wild journey. You're selling the vision of the company and how big it'll become to investors if that's something that you decide to do. You're selling your story to press so that they'll write about you. So there's always something that you're going to be selling. And I think you have to know how to sell. So that's been a more instrumental skill, I think, as we've grown and evolved than my engineering background actually was.
For those who have been listening, you know I'm a massive fan of Squarespace, and I don't really know what I would do without them. With both our brick and mortar store as well as our e-commerce, I can do everything in one place. Whether it's e-commerce, I can do inventory, email campaigns, appointments, and so much more. Now, Beauty Behind the Brand has partnered up with Squarespace to offer you 10% off your first subscription. All you need is promo code PARTNER10.
That's so interesting. I totally relate to the whole sales because like I've been doing that with our line, and I don't have a business back. I have an aesthetics background. I don't have business
Yeah.
background or any of that. So I found it very, yeah, kind of cringe at the beginning, but then you're like realizing when you love something, you're going to talk about it anyways to anyone who's not even if they're interested, your friends or and people you run into. But I find too, it's yeah, getting kind of over that cringe feeling, whether you're talking to someone in person, over the phone, email, and how yeah, you're gonna help them trying to put it in
Yeah.
that perspective, vice versa.
Yeah.
When you did Dragon's Den, what was it like in the prep for that to try to figure out how you were gonna actually um like propose the idea to them? How did you work with another company to help do that, or was that all of you and Connie preparing the presentation?
It was all of us, and that was actually probably the most terrifying like single event within our entrepreneurship story at this point. So how the Dragon's Den process worked is, for us, we decided to finally apply to it because people kept telling us, oh, you guys should go in Dragon's Den, you should go in Dragon's Den, you're so well presented, like you get your name out there within Canada. And we had kind of always like brushed it off as being like, oh, like I don't know if this is really something that would help us, like we're not necessarily looking to take on dragon investment right now. But finally we're like, okay, if we keep hearing this from people, like clearly this is something that we should at least explore. And I think we were honestly kind of like self-filtering ourselves out of a little bit of just like fear of the process and like overwhelm in many ways, because it's like you're putting yourself on national television. But finally we decided to pull the trigger, and we went and auditioned in March of 2020. So it was literally like maybe 2 weeks before COVID really kicked off in Toronto. And I had also been diagnosed like 3 months before that with a brain tumor. So I was going in for surgery to remove the tumor, like I think like 5 days after we met with the producers. So it was just a crazy, crazy time. You basically go into the CBC auditorium, pitch your story and your idea to the producers, not to the dragons themselves. And it's like you have like 5 minutes with them.
Oh
and then
my
that's how they decide, are you going to get some airtime and go into the studio and get to actually film an episode in front of the dragons. We heard back from them, I think in like June, July of that same year, that we had made the cut to one of, I think it was like 80 companies, 100 companies that were going to go and film
Wow.
in studio. So that was like a big milestone. To prep for it, we got on as many calls as we could with other founders that we knew or like knew through connections that had been on the show, to ask them, what was your experience like? How did you prepare? What tips would you have? So I think we spoke with like 6 or 7 different founders, and that's kind of what we used to craft our initial pitch. You're also paired up with a producer, so they help and they give you feedback
Oh,
based off your
interesting.
pitch, and they help you to prepare, know what to say, know what to wear, how to follow your prompts, all of those sorts of things. But really, ultimately, it's up to you to come up with the ideas of how to frame things.
Wow.
And what you don't see on the show, because it's so heavily edited, is that we were actually in there for probably 40 to 45 minutes. And then, of course, they can't show a full pitch. Like, it wouldn't be very interesting. So they edit it down to like 6 to 8 minutes for the pitches. So you have to get your point across very succinctly. You always have to maintain a bit of a poker face, because they'll take a reaction from one thing and edit in somewhere else to like add the drama. It's television.
Reality TV.
It's reality TV, exactly. There has to be something that's entertaining in there. And of the companies that pitch, actually only around like, I think it was like 70 to 75% of them actually air on television, because they only pick the ones that again are interesting. If everything goes super smoothly, like, and there's nothing that's like, oh wow, shock moment, then you probably aren't going to make the cut to television. So that was something that we knew that we had to add in an element of like suspense or drama, or like something that made things a little bit more interesting. And so for us, that was definitely my like cancer story, because how often do you have a 26-year-old that comes on and has brain cancer? So we knew that that was going to be like our shock wow factor. And we did end up making the cut for national airing, and our episode aired in October of 2020, which was around 4 months after we had rebranded New Body into 3 Ships. So it's kind of like effectively at that time, the company was only 4 months old, because everything changed. Like the product names, the packaging, the brand name, the website. It was essentially a brand new brand in many cases, in many ways, that we built off of our knowledge of like the mistakes and the learnings that we had from the original brand New Body.
And I find that something as entrepreneurs, there's always you're problem solving as you go.
Yeah.
Especially as a startup, it's like, okay, let's try this. It's experimenting after experiment, and then yes, learning from those mistakes and moving forward. Because I'm trying to think, when I had met you, I feel like all these things had just happened. Like I feel like you guys were just on Dragon's Den. You had just gone. You were going through all your medical stuff that was going on as well. It was like, I'm like, what? There was just all these things you had, and it just hit me. That's when I was like, we need to have you on, because there were so many things that just have stayed with me since we met back in 2019 that still to this day I think about, of even like changing names, how that kind of came up throughout, and how you had to literally pivot everything change that. So if you don't mind chatting a little bit more, kind of how that process all happened, and
Yeah.
how you came up with the new name. So like literally, and it influenced so much of your brand so perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. It was quite the undertaking. Probably the biggest risk I think that we've taken within the business up to this point, but also a risk that made total sense that we were kind of like, we have to do this. So how the rebrand came about is we weren't able to secure the trademark for our old brand name New Body without going through like a court process, because there was a competing company that the examiner was concerned that we had too much overlap with, even though they were in a different area of beauty. They did like beauty tools, like lasers and like at home like tool products. But since we had launched New Body, they had actually come out with like their own line of skincare as well. And so we were just like, at the time, this was October of 2019. We're like, we're so small. We're still like pretty much a nothing brand. If we're ever going to change our brand name, and it's really important for us to own the trademark, because when you're a consumer goods company, that's effectively your IP. Like you don't really get patents for things very frequently. It's your brand name is what matters and what you need to protect. So we knew that we needed the trademark, and that the best way for us to get this without going through like a 1 or 2 year long and really expensive court process was to just change the name. So we partnered up with a branding agency local to Toronto called Renga, and they're the ones that helped us come up with a new name, developed like a new brand book, new brand identity, voice, visuals, everything, redid the packaging to align with this new brand. And we took the learnings from New Body, which was that we were like, okay, we thought that our consumer was going to be on the younger side, so probably like 16 to 30. What we discovered is that she's actually older than what we thought. So she's more likely 25 to 45. So we wanted to mature the brand up to reflect our consumer.
Oh, love it. Yeah.
We also wanted a brand name that was easy to spell and to pronounce, because New was spelled NIU. So people would always misspell it. They'd always mispronounce it. We wanted something that was easy for people to spell, remember, understand. And we wanted something that wasn't really obviously a skincare company or really obviously for a man or a woman. We wanted it to be androgynous, something that made people kind of be like, oh, why is that skincare? What's the story behind this? And to pause and think critically about it. So those were kind of the parameters that we had given to the brand agency for what we wanted the name to become. And they came up with the name 3 Ships. It was one of probably 10 options that they delivered to us. And how they came up with the name is they were researching. They basically go through this Wikipedia process, is how they do their process. So they'll like type in skincare, and then how Wikipedia has all these different links. So you like follow the links and then see what like this ties to, and it just gets their creative juices flowing. They're like
That's so cool.
literally geniuses. I couldn't do this sort of stuff for a living. And so I guess they came across the story of the Fountain of Youth, which is obviously not a real place. But the fables about how it was discovered is that it was discovered by a fleet of just 3 ships. So that's how we came up with the name. Was it kind of reflected our ideals of, you don't need a ton of products in your routine. We don't believe in a 20 step routine. We don't believe that you need 50 ingredients in a product in order for it to be effective. It's really more about quality rather than quantity. And it just it stuck, and it sounded great, looked great on like an actual package. So that's why we went forward with it.
That's amazing. And I love, even the color tones, because you had a lot of pinks and like kind of bright colors with your old brand. I remembered the bottles like from following you before. And the maturity, you can definitely see that, and making it like brand neutral. So anyone can pick it up off the shelf, and not because it's a pink bottle or a blue bottle or purple or whatever, it doesn't matter. That's
exactly
so on the branding side too.
Yeah. And packaging is like a constant evolution. We're always making tweaks to our packaging as you grow. It's kind of like, okay, now we can afford to like have these larger order sizes where we can do more customizations instead of buying things off like the shelf and just going with stock packaging. So it's a constant evolution. I think brands are constantly playing around with their packaging, updating copy, adding new elements that consumers are looking for. Definitely something that's been huge over the last probably 2 years for us as a brand focus has been sustainability. So we've made a lot of changes to our packaging and to the products that we're launching to reflect those changes in consumer ideals. And definitely within our target audience, sustainability is really, really important for them. It is something that they'll make buying decisions based off of. It's still not a core part of our brand identity, because we view it as more table stakes. It's something that we have to be doing. It's our responsibility as a brand. We actually recently became B Corp certified. We were the first B
Wow.
Corp certified company actually for this year in 2023 to be certified, and one of only 102 skincare brands globally that are B Corp certified, which is
That's
really
amazing.
incredible. Yeah.
Wow. That's like, wow, that's incredible that you guys have gone that extra mile in order to do that. Cause we've been doing packaging changing. We did all of that with Health Canada and trying to get approvals for FDA. We're doing European right now. And like, people have no idea. Like, when you look at a package, now I look at everything with a totally different mind frame. I'm like, wow, even down to the barcoding, like people
Yeah.
think they just magically appear all the work you need to do for all of the elements, and even the stamp of approvals for like vegan, cruelty free, all the things, what actually entails for those.
Yeah, and the certification processes, they're quite intensive. Like the vegan.org certification process is so intensive. So is B Corp. B Corp took us a year and a half to actually get because of all the like due diligence that they do, which is great for consumers because then you know that you can actually stand by it. But as a brand, it's just painstaking.
Yeah.
Same with like EWG verified. The majority of our products are EWG verified. And for the ones that aren't, we're still working on those applications because it takes a long time to get the process finished. And it's actually really expensive for all these
Mhm.
different licenses and certifications and approvals.
Absolutely. And how many SKUs do you have now? Do you know off the top of your head?
Currently we have 22 SKUs. We're going to be launching another 2 later next month, another one the month after that, and then another 3 throughout the course of this year.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I've been loving the new like the under eye treatments, like
Oh,
the
amazing.
that dissolve. Like, I feel like even the video content for them and are like, it's just awesome to see, and people are loving it because, like you said, it's a responsibility, I feel like, for biodegradable sustainability, all those things, because for the generations to come. And I feel like even our younger generation, like you and I are very similar age, and I feel like even the younger generation now are noticing more of these things. They're educating themselves on the importance of product and what we're putting on our skin, as well as even what it's going to be doing to our planet for years to come.
Long term. Yeah, like things like micro beads and microplastics that you'll see in those like clean and clear cleansers that are just like the little like bursting bubbles that don't actually burst. They're just little bits of plastic. Like I'm so happy that governments are starting to ban those, but it's wild to me that those were used for so long and then going directly into our waterways and being ingested by fish and things like,
Yeah.
which then ends up in like, as it goes up the food chain, ends up in our bloodstream. And
Mhm.
especially after my cancer journey, I think that I've become even more aware of the types of like food that I'm eating, how is it processed, the ingredients that I'm putting on my skin. I've transferred all of my products to just clean beauty now and natural beauty products because it's no longer the case that natural beauty doesn't perform.
Miskoka Beauty wants to thank everyone for listening to our podcast, and we're offering 15% off your first bottle of Lash and Brow Serum by Miskoka Beauty. Now, if you haven't heard, or if you haven't tried or seen before and afters, or even seen reviews, you're definitely going to want to head to miskoka.com and click onto our lash serum to actually read some of the reviews, because this product is unbelievable. It will enhance your natural length and your brows as well, making them more full and absolutely gorgeous. So head over to miskoka.com and type in promo code Beauty Brand Podcast 15. Once again, that's Beauty Brand Podcast 15. Happy shopping and happy lashing.
In many cases, it actually performs better than its synthetic counterparts because it's biocompatible with your skin and it has ingredients that your body already knows what to do with. And the science has advanced so much, and even in the last like 3-4 years, that the bioidentical ingredients and components and actives that are coming out now for like traditional synthetics like retinoids, and now we have identical natural sources like bakuchiol that have the same skin effect. For me, it's kind of like, why would you not choose to use something that's natural, that's good for your body, better for the planet, doesn't have all these petrochemicals in it, if it works just as well and is the same price? It's kind of a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Even here at the spa, like, we have people come in, our clients, and they're having a reaction. And I'm like, okay, what are you using? Because obviously it's foreign to what our bodies are used to absorbing or using. And I think it's something to look into when people are looking and educating what's on the back of a label and knowing like we do have a professional line out of Spain here. Like we love our European skincare lines, but yeah, learning like and educating our clients, like you don't have to have a retinol, or you don't have to have this. What does your skin actually need, and
Actually
breaking those
needs.
things down.
Yeah.
And yeah, even the education of like what is actually going down the sink, like what is that doing to our bodies, and even microbeads and all these other things, a lot of them actually scratch the surfaces of our skin
They
too,
do,
right?
yeah. Like microabrasions,
Yeah.
any of those like walnut scrubs like of St. Ives that now everyone knows aren't very good for you, but most people use when they're in like grade 7, 8 within our generations. And I'm definitely not of the mindset that you have to use natural, you have to use clean, but I do believe that if that's a choice that you choose to make for yourself and for your body or for the planet or whatever your reasoning is, that the products you get should actually be natural. It shouldn't just be something that's like marketed to make it look like it is.
Absolutely.
So it's much more of like, if you as a consumer decide to make a choice, you should actually get what it is you're buying, and you shouldn't just get like lies and gimmicks, because unfortunately there is no legal definition for what natural is, and it's something that we're definitely advocating for within the space. That FDA has some changes proposed, but it's probably still going to take years before these even potentially possibly go into law, and it's not something that's really on Health Canada's radar at all at the moment. So there's a lot that needs to change within the industry.
I noticed that even as like we're going through the process with Health Canada, we just had a meeting last week with FDA's. Technically this week we're going to have one for the European approvals, and it's so interesting to me, to each country the standards and like of the differential, what is important to them and what isn't. Or even like when we did Health Canada, it was like knowing the percentages, but there's no, it's just it's not taken care of for health, like for like drugs and stuff. Obviously it's a little bit more in depth, but for the beauty industry it's actually quite wild, and like that is going into our bloodstream still.
Yeah,
Like,
it is crazy. There's like hardly
on
any
our skin.
oversight, which
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of consumers don't realize. Like, it's like when you release a product to market, it's not like you're like shipping that product to Health Canada for them to test and approve. Like, you're submitting your formula and the range of what the ingredients are, and then they're comparing that against their restricted list, to make sure that's compliant with Health Canada's needs. But like, their standards are so far behind what the European Union has. Like, I think the
Yeah.
EU bans over 2,000 raw materials, which we ban all those same ingredients from our products as well.
Mm-hmm.
Health Canada is like significantly smaller. I think it was like maybe 800 or something like that. I used to know these
Yeah, I
numbers
think
off
it's
the top
less
of my
than a
head.
thousand, if I
Yeah, it's less than
remember.
1,000. And the US, it's like 40. Like, it's crazy. They hardly ban anything. And it's like, how is it that one set of countries like the EU and Japan have really high standards versus Canada is kind of somewhere in the middle, and the US is so lax?
Yeah,
It's just, it's crazy.
I'm looking forward to the EU meeting, because I feel like that's going to be our basis point. Like that is going to be where it's going to make the most sense. And just hearing the information, because even as an esthetician I love hearing like what the different ingredients or what you could switch this out that would be very similar, and just learning the formula. I mean, I hated chemistry in high school, but like talk about skincare
But
chemistry.
this is like fun chemistry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, chemistry that you can understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what's something that you're looking forward to for 2023 that you, like you had mentioned you're launching some new products? Is there anything else that kind of comes to mind when you're thinking about 2023 for yourself?
Definitely the new product launches. We're launching a product this year that's by far our most highly requested product, like head and shoulders around any other request. So I'm really excited to be able to bring that to our consumers.
Amazing.
We're also making some changes to our back end of the business, because a huge focus on it for us this year is operational efficiency, and like cost cutting. I think a lot of other businesses are in a very similar state, just with the pending recession. A lot of companies now are really struggling to raise external funds from investors, because they've pulled back on a lot of their investment strategy and are just focused on supporting existing portfolio companies. So it's become a lot harder to raise money. So as a company, you kind of have to stand on your own without external investment. So because of that, we're now switching over to doing all of our fulfillment and bring it back in-house. For the last like 2 years, we've been using a third-party logistics company, or a 3PL, which is great because then you don't have to manage your own warehouse. You don't have to pay for that space. You don't have to hire a team to do all that pick and pack. It kind of like offboards it, but it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Steals a lot of your margin. So we're looking to bring that back in-house, which I'm excited for, apprehensive for, because
Yeah.
it's a big, big, big change, but I'm excited to see what that does for the business from an operational efficiency.
Now, will that be in Toronto as well?
In Toronto, yeah. So we have a warehouse location secured that we're now just in the process of setting up, because you have to buy all the racking, you
Oh
have
yeah.
to integrate all the different systems so that all your different systems are talking to each other, and you have to hire the team. So we actually have a few open roles right now as well. So we're going to be hiring, I think, 4 new full-time people this year too. Right now we're at 9 full-timers. So by the end of the year, we'll be at 13, which we're really
That's
excited about.
amazing. Wow. And
Yeah.
also just to have it in house. Like I mean, my warehouse is a lot different than your setup, but like filling orders, I just get such like satisfaction, and also
So
content, having
satisfying.
it all available for you guys there, and even for you to go in and see what's going on, and being able to chat with everyone in person too. I feel like now that the world's getting back to normal, there's definitely that in-person like sense of team chatting, brainstorming, having everyone together too, and even having 4 extra people to bounce ideas off of as well.
Definitely. Yeah. It's always really exciting whenever we're able to grow the team, because then that means that we're able to do things that right now we wouldn't have capacity for, that like there's just only so many hours in the day that the team can obviously work, and we don't want people to feel burnt out or overwhelmed. So making sure that they feel supported by bringing on people to help support them is really important. So we're really, really excited for those new team members to join. And I totally hear you on the need to connect. Actually, right now I'm sitting in like the party common room in my condo while we're recording this, and the team is in the next room over. So they come over to my place once every 2 weeks. We used to have an office, and we just found that people got so used to working from home during the pandemic that the commute was just not something people wanted to do, even if it was just twice a week. But we still want time together and to have that FaceTime and be able to build a culture. So this is kind of the compromise that we've made, and it's worked out really well for us. And then instead of having the office space, we put the budget instead towards having great offsites 3 times a year. So that's worked really well for us. I would definitely recommend it as a structure for other founders.
Yeah, I feel like the work from home hasn't been like, I'm working from home quite often now too, instead of having like an office or space to go to. But yeah, it does almost make you, I feel like I'm more productive when I'm at home, because I'm definitely like, I love chatting with people. I get distracted very easily when people are around. So I feel like I can deep dive and really go down those rabbit holes of things I need to do. But yeah, there's nothing better than, even when I come into the spa like I am here today, and I'm brainstorming ideas, or the girls have different suggestions or ideas, or even like new products that might be integrated to another product we're already using. And yeah, it's just there, you can't, even that in person, there's nothing comparable.
There's no replacement. Yeah. Especially for brainstorming and creative outlets, right? Like, how can you effectively brainstorm over Zoom? Like, people are just constantly talking over each other, or like feel like they can't talk. So everyone's staying on like mute, and just one person's talking, and people are just writing in chat. Like, it's not a great way to actually have a group conversation. So I think it is about striking a balance, and it'll be different for every team. And also, by being remote first and then coming together a few times a year, it opens us up to a wider applicant pool too. So then we're able to recruit from, across Canada, or also down into the States. We do have 1 US employee, and it allows us to have better flexibility over who we're hiring, which is so important to finding the best talent.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that, like, there is no borders when you're working in that
exactly.
sense. Now, are you selling just exclusively in Canada right now?
We're sold in the States as well. So we're carried in Canadian and US retailers, and then we sell through our own e-commerce site to both Canada and the US. So we have a warehouse, a 3PL down in the US that ships all of our US orders, and then also a warehouse up here in Canada that ships all of our Canadian orders. So for Canada, some of the bigger retailers that we work with are Hudson's Bay, Indigo, Whole Foods, and Holt Renfrew would be our larger ones, and then lots of mom and pops and independents. And then in both markets, we're sold in the detox market, and then down in the US, we're sold in Credo and Whole Foods as well.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I find too, when you get to those like wholesale situations, and it is kind of like that validation, isn't it? Like that feeling,
it totally is.
Like, okay, maybe we are onto something.
Yeah, exactly. Because shelf space is really valuable to these retailers, right? Like, they look at everything from a shelf square footage, like velocity rate of how many sales you're pushing through for every inch of shelf space is literally how they evaluate brands. And so if you're not delivering, they have no issue with kicking you out. So it's a constant kind of like battle to make sure that you're doing the right things to drive velocity. But also if you're staying on with them and they're expanding door counts, then that's a real validation. Like for example, Indigo is a great example of this. We had started with them, I think it was last October, initially just online on .ca. And we did so well that within 6 months, they'd expanded us into a portion of their doors. And then 6 months after that, they expanded us into all their doors that carry wellness products. So it just goes to show that oftentimes a lot of these retailers will kind of move cautiously, but once you can prove yourself that you're working, you have the sales velocity, you're willing to support the brand through marketing activations. Connie does a great job of managing the accounts from a relationship basis, which is also really important. They're willing to kind of partner with you and expand you across the doors. And that's happened with Indigo, Whole Foods, Hudson's Bay, and Detox, that they all started us off with smaller tests and then expanded our door accounts and presence from there.
Yeah, I was speaking to Hudson Bay because they were doing like a test kind of a test system through their online, and then they were going to push people. And I had asked them a few questions about that. I was like, oh, was there anyone that you have now pushed through that program? And they're like, oh yeah. And to be honest, they said a lot of Canadian brands actually matched it. So I feel like between Toronto and Vancouver, we have so many entrepreneurs and
so many
new businesses. I feel like every time I pick up a product now, I'm like, oh, Vancouver based or Toronto based. So it's nice
amazing.
To see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And consumers, like at least what we've found from our customers is they love supporting a women-owned Canadian-based company, because you have to be a bit more intentional about where you're shopping in order to find those brands. But a lot of people are choosing to really put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, and to support their local economy, which is so wonderful. And it's so great to see. And especially for us, because we actually manufacture all of our products within Toronto as well. We only use Ontario-based manufacturers for all of our like finished goods, which I bring so much, like I take so much pride out of that. And it also makes good business sense, because then you're not paying for things in US dollars when the currency is going all crazy. Like obviously the Canadian dollar right now is really weak. So if we're having to buy all of our goods in USD, we'd actually be like missing out on quite a bit of margin. And then it just allows you to form those relationships if there's anything that goes wrong, which there's always things going wrong when you own a company. And especially when you're developing and creating a product, we're able to go in person and just work through these issues with our manufacturers. I don't have to get on a plane. I can literally take an Uber to all of them.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I think it just makes sense.
Absolutely. And to know it's all Canadian, like when you think about it, like, and you're supporting your own neighbors, right? You're supporting your community, you're supporting the people you need to take care of in our own country. So I think that's such a great point too. So now to finish things off, like you had mentioned some of the retailers where everyone can find 3 ships. Is there any like to finish things off, something that you would tell young entrepreneurs, if you could give anyone a little piece of advice to end the episode?
Yeah, definitely. So my piece of advice is usually pretty consistent, and it kind of relates back to what we talked about at the start of this call and podcast, is learn how to sell. And ideally earlier rather than later. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel weird and icky and gross when you first get started. But the longer that you do it for, the more comfortable that it become. And it's so important. It's probably the number one skill that any founder needs. So
absolutely, I
brush
couldn't
up on
agree
your
more.
sales skills. Yeah,
I second that.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Laura. I feel like, well, like we said, we haven't seen each other. We chat every once in a while, but it's been since 2019. So it's been an honor to jump on with you on this call. And I feel like a lot in this short episode, I feel like there's so many things that people can take home with them over this.
Amazing.
So,
it was my pleasure. It was great chatting with you and great seeing you again.
Yes, you as well. Thanks so much, Laura.
My pleasure. Thanks, Nicole.